the man who made America laugh, died while everyone thought he was telling a joke. The 11th of October 1991, on the set of The Royal Family, Redd Foxx clutched his chest, gasped for air, and hit the floor. The crew laughed. They thought it was another one of his bits. But it wasn't. The king of comedy was dying right in front of them. Before there was Pryor, before there was Murphy, before there was Rock, there was Redd Foxx, the blueprint. The first man to bring street language, dirty jokes, and real pain to a microphone and make America listen. He came from nothing, a light-skinned boy from the slums of Street Louis who turned being laughed at into making the whole world laugh with him. A hustler, a survivor, a genius with a filthy mouth and a broken heart. He fought Hollywood for respect. He fought the IRS for his money. He fought his own demons until they finally won. But for 2 decades, he owned the stage. 55 albums. 1 groundbreaking sitcom. Millions of laughs and not 1 ounce of apology. They called him dirty. He called it honesty. They called him wild. He called it survival. This isn't just the story of a comedian. It's the story of a man who refused to bow and turned the struggle of Black America into something holy. A laughter that never dies. This is Redd Foxx, the original king of comedy. Long before the fame, before the suits, before the laughter, there was pain. John Elroy Sanford came into this world on the 9th of December 1922 in the rough back streets of Street Louis, Missouri. They called him Red because of his wavy copper hair, a gift from his Native American grandmother, and that fiery streak that burned even as a child. His father, Fred Glenn Sanford, walked out when Red was just 4, leaving behind 2 boys and a mother, drowning in poverty. His mother, Mary, tried to rebuild, taking up with a man who ran errands for Al Capone. When she moved to Chicago with her new lover, she left her sons behind with their grandmother. That's when the laughter stopped. Red grew up hungry for food, for love, for something to fill the hole that abandonment left. His older brother Fred became his idol, a street hustler always 1 step away from trouble. And little Red? He learned early that words could cut deeper than fists. In school, kids mocked his pale skin and red hair, said he wasn't black enough. So he fought back with jokes. If you laughed first, you didn't have to cry later. That's how comedy found him. That's how he survived. He was kicked out of school by 5th grade, too sharp, too wild, too free for the classroom. By 14, he was running the streets, part of a local gang, learning the code of hustlers. One day he looked around and saw men with pockets full of liquor and lungs full of lies, and he swore he'd never die forgotten in those same alleys. Then came Harlem. He and his bandmates hopped a freight train east, chasing a dream and eating onions for 3 days straight. By the time he hit New York, he was broke, but he was there. He slept on rooftops, wrapped in newspapers, and washed dishes for tips. But even then, people noticed something about the kid with red hair and a sharp tongue. They called him Fox. It was in that same kitchen, scrubbing plates at Jimmy's Chicken Shack, that fate introduced him to another hustler, a skinny kid with the same red tint in his hair. His name was Malcolm Little. They became brothers, Chicago Red and Detroit Red. 2 lost boys chasing different hustles, both running from pain. One would find God, the other would find comedy. For Redd Foxx, the world wasn't kind, so he decided to make it laugh instead. That fire the one lit in the streets of Street Louis would carry him through every joke, every heartbreak, every stage that would one day call his name. By the time Redd Foxx hit his late teens, Harlem had already become his classroom, a neon jungle where jokes, hustles, and broken dreams danced together in cigarette smoke. He wasn't rich, but he was learning the rhythm of survival. Days were for scrubbing dishes and sweeping floors. Nights were for corner talk, rhythm, and jazz. And on those nights, Red learned how to make the whole room stop just to hear him talk. He called it verbal hustling, because in Harlem, words were currency. He started out small, telling jokes between jazz sets, cracking up cooks in the back room, slipping punchlines in the middle of a song. People loved his sharpness, his raw truth. The language was dirty, the stories unfiltered, and that's exactly why they worked. Still, the boy needed a partner, someone who could match his timing, his street wit. That's when he met Slappy White, another hungry comedian chasing rent and respect. Together, they became Fox and White, a comedy duo that played the clubs from Harlem to Chicago, from segregated bars to mob-owned lounges. They were the perfect match, Slappy's smooth energy balancing Red's chaos. But Redd was always the wild card. He refused to wear blackface makeup for white audiences, refused to bow to the expectations of minstrel comedy. "Laugh with me," he'd say, "not at me." In an era when white comedians mocked black voices, Redd Foxx made people confront the real sound of one. The duo caught the attention of Dinah Washington, the Queen of Blues herself. She took them on tour, promising $1,000 a week more money than either had ever seen. But success didn't come clean. Racism followed them across every state line. Clubs refused to house them. White audiences jeered when the jokes cut too close, and sometimes even the black promoters cheated them out of pay. Still, Redd kept performing. He knew he couldn't afford to quit, not when the laughter was finally louder than the hunger. When the partnership finally fell apart, some said over money. Others whispered over a woman Redd stayed behind in California. He was broke again, sleeping in kitchens, washing dishes at jazz clubs just to eat. But that's where it happened. One night, after a singer failed to show up, Redd grabbed the mic. He wasn't clean. He wasn't polished. He was real. The crowd exploded. From that night forward, Redd Foxx was no longer a dishwasher, he was a comedian. By the early 1950 seconds, his name was being whispered in smoky clubs from Vegas to New York. He started recording his raw routines, street humor, that white radio wouldn't dare air for Dutone Records. 55 party albums, as they called them. Millions of copies sold underground. No filters, no apologies. And for the first time in American history, black laughter uncut, uncensored, was on vinyl. Redd Foxx wasn't just telling jokes. He was building a revolution, one laugh at a time. When Sanford and Son premiered on NBC in January 1972, America didn't just laugh, it changed. For the first time, a black man wasn't a sidekick or a servant. He was the star. He was Fred G. Sanford, stubborn, broke, loud, hilarious, and real. Every Friday night, millions tuned in to hear that bass riff and watch Redd Foxx shuffle out onto the screen with that classic line, "This is the big one, Elizabeth. I'm coming to join ya, honey." Families from Harlem to Hollywood sat in their living rooms, laughing together white and black, side by side. The world had never seen a sitcom like this. Street smart, unapologetic, and written in the rhythm of real black life. Behind the camera, though, the show was chaos. Redd was at war, not with his audience, but with the studio. He was earning $20,000 an episode, but when he learned that white staff members made more than him, his rage boiled over. He'd fought too long to be disrespected again. He stormed off set, cursed producers, and demanded ownership stakes. "All in the family gets rich off my show," he said, "and I get scraps? Not this time." NBC didn't know how to handle him. They called him difficult. They called him crazy. But what Redd wanted was dignity, the one thing Hollywood never freely gave to black artists. He refused to play dumb, refused to make the kind of coon jokes that white writers tried to slip into the script. He and co-star Demon Wilson fought to keep the characters sharp, proud, and human. When they laughed up, never down. Yet the fame came at a price. Redd's marriage to Betty Jean was unraveling under the weight of success and scandal. He drank more, gambled more, and surrounded himself with people who loved his money more than his heart. And when he stopped showing up for work, calling in sick for weeks at a time, NBC filed a $10 million lawsuit. The headlines called him ungrateful, but Redd called it survival. Eventually, the network folded, and the show returned, but the magic was gone. The laughter sounded hollow now. By the late 70s, Sanford and Son ended, and with it, the golden age of Redd Foxx. But he wasn't done. He signed with ABC for the Redd Foxx Comedy Hour, the first black man to ever executive produce his own primetime series. $100,000 a week. A new empire. A second chance. And then, just 6 episodes in the show was cancelled. Hollywood moved on. The IRS moved in. They stripped his cars, his furniture, even the jewelry off his hands live on TV. All they left him was his bed. The man who had once made America laugh itself to tears was now crying in front of America. That's how fast a throne can crumble when you build it in a house that never wanted you to rule. Redd Foxx never just told jokes. He exposed America one punchline at a time. In a country where black men were still fighting to be seen, he forced white audiences to hear them. No makeup, no bowing, no pretending. Just truth, wrapped in laughter so raw it made even his friends uncomfortable. When Redd stood on stage, cigarette burning between his fingers, He wasn't a character, he was a confession. The jokes about race, poverty, love, and loneliness weren't fiction. They were testimony. He made America laugh at its own sins, and somehow made it thank him for doing it. Every dirty word he spoke came from a clean place survival. He knew what hunger sounded like, what humiliation felt like, what it meant to be laughed at. So he flipped it. He turned laughter into power. For him, humor wasn't an escape, it was revenge. In the 1,970 seconds, when Sanford and Son aired on primetime, the show became more than just entertainment. It was a cultural reckoning. For white America, it was their first look inside a working-class black home, one that was proud, loud, and unfiltered. For black America, it was recognition, a mirror reflecting back the struggle and the swagger they already lived every day. And behind that brilliance was Redd Foxx, the man who refused to sanitize his people for TV. He made jokes about junkyards, bills, and hustling, but underneath it all was love. Love for the people who never got the spotlight. Love for the rhythm and defiance of black life. Yet the same America that once laughed with him later watched him fall with quiet satisfaction. When the IRS took his house live on television, the image of Redd Foxx crying in his own doorway said more about the system than any joke ever could. The man who broke barriers had been broken by the same forces he defied: racism, greed, and a country that loved black culture but not black people. Still, Redd's legacy refused to die. His timing lived in Richard Pryor. His fearlessness lived in Eddie Murphy. His rhythm lived in Bernie Mac. And his honesty, that sacred, painful, perfect honesty, became the blueprint for every comedian who dared to tell the truth and survive it. He showed America its own reflection, cracked, funny, beautiful, and cruel. And even when the lights went out, the echo of his laughter lingered, not because it was funny, but because it was real. Redd Foxx didn't just entertain a nation, he held a mirror to it, and he never looked away. The 11th of October, 1991. On the set of The Royal Family, Redd Foxx fell to the floor, clutching his chest. The crew laughed because that's what Redd always did when he wanted attention. Except this time, he wasn't acting. He was dying. For 40 years, the man had been laughing through pain, and now, the pain had the final word. At 68 years old, Redd Foxx was broke, exhausted, and still fighting. Fighting with producers. Fighting the IRS. Fighting his body after decades of smoke, liquor, and stress. When he collapsed that afternoon, Della Reese ran to him, shouting his name. He whispered, "Get my wife." Moments later, his pulse faded. The king of comedy was gone. The tragedy wasn't just that Redd Foxx died, it was how he was allowed to die. The networks that once profited off his genius didn't even pay for the funeral. It was Eddie Murphy, the man who inherited his throne, who stepped in quietly and covered the cost. Because in Hollywood, even legends need saving. And yet, Redd's story didn't end in that studio. His spirit lingered not in the mansion he lost to the IRS, but in every club where a black comedian picked up a mic and refused to play safe. Every time you hear a punchline that makes you flinch, that's Redd. Every time a comic tells the truth, no one else will say that's Redd. Every time the world laughs at its own ugliness, that's Redd. He was more than a comedian. He was the father of the underground, the first man to turn street life into stage life, to make the unspoken sacred. He gave the unheard a voice, and the broken a reason to smile. And though he died in debt, his legacy was priceless. Sanford and Son became a blueprint for every sitcom that came after The Jeffersons, Good Times, Martin, The Bernie Mac Show. Each one carried a spark of Redd's defiance. Some stories end with applause. Redd Foxx's ended with silence. But it was the kind of silence that holds weight, the kind that demands remembrance. He showed the world that laughter can come from pain, that truth can wear a dirty mouth, and that even a poor boy from Street Lewis can change television forever. Redd Foxx once said, "I'm not dirty, I'm honest. You just live a dirty life." He was right. The world wasn't ready for his honesty, but time proved him right. And so, to the man who made us laugh, who made us uncomfortable, who made us see, thank you. Some kings wear crowns. Redd Foxx wore a smirk, a cigarette, and the weight of a generation, and somehow, he still made us laugh. Rest easy, Redd. Your laughter outlived you. And maybe that's the purest kind of immortality.